A political newcomer is promising a new kind of leadership in Wisconsin if he's elected governor. Milwaukee area businessman Andy Gronik said last week that he plans to challenge Governor Walker in 2018. Gronik is a Democrat who is touting his private sector experience, and Andy Gronik joins us now on Upfront. It's good to have you on the program.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So what is the biggest difference? You're talking about a different kind of leadership. What's the biggest difference between you and the governor?
Well, I think there's a big difference in leading by theoretical and actually having had the experience. So Governor Walker is a person who's had a lifetime experience in government. He's been on a government paycheck since he was a young man. I've been building businesses. I've actually been working not just to build my business, but our success was based upon helping other businesses to be successful, helping them grow. So for years, we helped people access the money they needed to grow and create good jobs. We solve problems in strategy, crisis, feasibility, the kinds of things that businesses are confronted all the time, and help to guide businesses in understanding that, of course, anytime you have labor working together with management in cooperative ways towards a common goal, that's how everything great is built.
So you did not sign the recall petition. You said that, the Governor Walker recall petition.
That's
did not
correct.
sign that, and you've really not been active in politics. So in what is likely to be a contested Democratic primary, I guess the question would be, why do you think you're going to be the guy who catches fire?
So I haven't been active at all. I mean, if I am
You've been
not
pretty open about that.
Yeah, I'm not a politician. I'm here because when I look at the state of Wisconsin, I've been here my whole life. I grew up in Glendale, went to Nicolay High School. My wife is a lifetime Wisconsin resident. We have 2 small kids. What's happening in Wisconsin right now, it just isn't my Wisconsin. I don't think it's our Wisconsin. We have families throughout our state who are struggling because they no longer have that one good family-sustaining job. They're working 2 or 3 jobs and still wondering, how in the world am I going to get to the end of the week and pay my rent, because I'd like to buy some groceries too. Things are tough in our state. And look at what's going on with health care. Health care is at risk. Schools are being attacked. It was time to step up and declare myself a candidate, because we can do much better in our state.
But if I'm a Democrat and I'm loyal to that party, I voted in that party, and I see somebody come along who has no attachment to that party, hasn't felt strongly about this stuff in the past, why would I vote for you?
Well, I wouldn't say that I haven't felt strongly about that in the past. I'm a person who has great respect for the fact that people can have different opinions and still come together and get things done. So in my business, in my life, while I didn't make politics a topic of conversation, it was because I could respect the fact that people would disagree. It's about finding common ground. It's about finding ways to actually move forward. That's not what's happening in the state of Wisconsin right now.
You talked about tough times in the state, and yet the governor in his re-election campaign, let's assume he's a candidate, is going to be talking about 3.1% unemployment, lowest unemployment mark in nearly 20 years. He's going to be talking about $8 billion in tax cuts. He's going to be talking about labor force participation rate that's higher than the national average. How do you make the case for change in light of those numbers?
So he loves to talk about unemployment, and it's a great metric. He loves to talk about the fact that there's more people employed in the state of Wisconsin. What I would suggest that he does when he's on those listening tours that he talks about, that are actually scripted and by invitation, go knock on some doors around Wisconsin. And what he'll find is that the people are not home because they're working that second job. They're working that third job. They're not seeing their kids. They don't have enough thought about having a vacation. People in the state are trying to get by. So having a low unemployment number, well, those people are working 3 jobs. We need to get back to having a real strategy that can be easily articulated, executed, and measure the success, where we're actually creating family-sustaining jobs that pay a living wage.
Let me ask you a quick question about Act 10, because you've talked a fair amount in the first week on the campaign trail. You said you'd like to see Act 10 repealed. In other words, get rid of the collective bargaining restrictions. But there, of course, is another part to Act 10, and that is the fact that public employees have to contribute more to their pensions and their health care. Is that also something you would favor repealing, or is just the collective bargaining restrictions?
So I look at it as I operate my own business. It was about making sure that people were paid fairly and that they had the kind of packages that made sense in today's marketplace. So I think what you have to do is bring people back to the table. Bring our teachers and our public employees back to the table. How in the world can we advance public education in our state and exclude the people who are actually responsible for making sure that education is great? Look at all of the issues, both with salary and benefits, and put a package together that inspires world-class teaching, world-class learning. That's what we need to do. That's the Wisconsin that it's always been for my entire life. That's where we need to go in the future.
So just to clarify there, how do you feel about the fact of the increased contributions that teachers and other public employees make towards pensions and towards their health insurance?
I think we have to look at the costs of all of those benefits, but I also believe that the benefits are important. I believe they're important to demonstrating to employees in our state that they're important, they're doing an important job, and no job is more important than educating our children. So like anything else, I would attack that the same way I've attacked every single problem in my life. Let's surround ourselves with great information. Let's surround ourselves with people who really understand where we want to go with education, and then make informed decisions about how we achieve those goals, and we make sure that we're appropriately and fairly compensating the people that are making it happen.
Andy Gronik has just announced that he's running for governor in 2018. He's a Democrat. We appreciate you being with us today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Our editorial partner, WisPolitics.com, tracks who's in and who's out of the races for governor and U.S. Senate in Wisconsin next year. You'll find that coverage on the election blog at WisPolitics.com. You just heard it, jobs next on up front, the second most important issue in the race for governor.